busy schedule.
No, thank you, David. No, I'm doing great, doing great. I'm really very grateful to have to be on this show and to be doing this with you. You're an inspiration to many. I've been following you for a long time, so it's an honor to be here talking with you.
What was interesting about it is I did an amazing interview with two people that had overcome cancer, and they have this amazing show. And all of a sudden, they told me about Sam, and I believe they told Sam about me, but we never really talked. It wasn't until about a week ago that we finally connected, because Sam is doing a lot for the community in cancer, but he's doing a lot in the fitness community, which I love. So I had invited Sam to come to one of my fitness shows, and again, Sam actually is a bodybuilder though. See, I never bodybuild. I modeled and I did a lot of hosting and things like that. I never got into that much size. But Sam, as a bodybuilder, got cancer, but I don't know his story. And that is what's so cool about it, is that I had to stay away from his social media and everything because I didn't want to do that. I wanted for the first time to hear Sam's story like you will today. Sam is going to share with us how cancer came into his life, how he overcame it, and how he's a life changer today and forever. Sam, tell me a little bit about that day or moment, because for me, I had a moment and then all of a sudden it wasn't until 7, 8 months later that I went to the doctor to find out I had cancer the first time. So tell me a little bit about your story.
It was one of those. I was a 27-year-old gym owner, fitness enthusiast, nutritionist. I thought I knew it all. I was like, how could this be? But the strange thing, like that day that I first heard those words, it wasn't like a lot of most people. I had this weird feeling inside that I was like, you know what? I already knew what the answer was. I knew it for the previous month. And, for me, that story started about 6 months prior when I first started noticing the symptoms of my cancer. And this is when I was in the peak of my athletic career. I was a former college football player. Right when I graduated, I decided to, get into bodybuilding as a way to, keep pushing myself, because I always like to challenge myself. And bodybuilding was something that it was more me versus me. And it's called bodybuilding, but it's actually more in the mind than it is anywhere else. And that's what gave me a lot of my strength during my hardships. But it was something that when it hit me, I really didn't know what was going on. I just started, first it was actually my brain started to slow down. That was the first symptom that I noticed. It was my cognitive decline, my memory, and I had a little brain scan. I was working with this doctor, and he was like, what, a lot of your numbers are off. And he's a doctor who looks between the lines, very fine details. And we were actually working on it homeopathically. I mean, honestly, doing certain vitamins, minerals, all different stuff, and it was working for a long time. But then there was just, there's a hard time in my life, and I was actually going through the toughest time of my life mentally before I heard those words that you have cancer. And, I was in a very dark place. And that's why I tell people this part of my story, because believe it or not, it was actually cancer that brought me out of that dark place.
Wow.
And I do owe it to, I know I got this for a reason. And I felt like, I was deviating away from my plan that God set out for me to do. And that was something that steered me back on the righteous path. And, when I heard those words, it was like, okay, now tell me a little bit more about it. So initially I was actually diagnosed at stage 2B Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Lymphoma. Okay, I didn't even
And
know.
so
I didn't even know what kind of cancer you had. So you had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I want to, before you go on, it's so interesting because so many people have tried to connect us, and they always say there's a similarity between, I ran gyms. I was a personal trainer, and and it's interesting to see him talk about it. And remember, I usually use the word cancer was a blessing. And he just shared how cancer brought him from a dark place. If you don't mind, and you were in training for competition, correct?
correct.
At that time. So when you're talking about dark time, is it because of the training that you were going through? Is it because of the dieting and the pressure you were putting on yourself? Or was this external pressure that was coming in that caused you to come into, I'm assuming, as some type of depression or some type of darkness?
Honestly, it wasn't that. That was what kept
Okay.
That's what kept me alive. That was so about 9 months into opening up my own business, my own training facility, is when I started getting those symptoms. And I was also in a very bad relationship at the time, something I should have gotten out of years ago. And then on top of that, I found out, my two closest friends or my employees were, stealing from the company. It was one of those things that a lot of things that all hit at once, where like my life was going so great for a while, and then and I went from my gym was very successful to plummeting, and right when my symptoms were hitting, but I just didn't have the energy. I didn't have the drive. Honestly, I couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. Because I had these stage 2B Hodgkin's lymphoma that you get really bad night sweats. So I have a cow king vet. I would drench 1/3 of it, roll over, drench the middle, roll over, drench the third, and then take the sheets off in the morning, clean it. So I never really slept because I was so cold, but it was a combination of things because my brain wasn't getting the nutrients my body was supposed to be absorbing. There was so much, and like I said, I know we don't have time. I could be dropping all sorts of science and stuff on you. Things that I learned. So I learned more during my battle with cancer than any book could have taught me.
Me too.
The human body.
Me too.
And it was the training that kept me from harming myself or doing anything. And that's where I really was when cancer kind of hit me, and I was in that place where I left that relationship. I decided, I was going to, rebuild my gym. I was going to bring it back to where it was before that started. But it was the cancer that was there's another way. And there's another way that you can treat the body and also go back to working on your mind. The strength of the human mind is a powerful force beyond, imagination. You can do anything. And I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but until you're in it, until you're in the thick of it, you have no idea how strong, what this can actually do for your body. And I've actually made it my mission, even if this is my personal thing, studying the brain and studying consciousness and the mind and what it actually does. And that's something I'll get into in a little bit. But when I first got diagnosed, I was actually more worried, about paying for the treatment, because that's when I found out my insurance didn't cover anything. So it was I actually got denied treatment 3 times.
Wow.
My cancer was spreading like wildfire, which, Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the more treatable cancers. When I was initially told what I had, it was 2B, which, I know you were probably giving this talk, hey, this is your percentage chance, this is kind of what you got, not the worst in the world for me. But the problem was I was dying, and I couldn't get any treatment. And I was got in a fight with my doctor, literally. I fired 2 of my oncologists because these people didn't have my interest in mind. They didn't care. I was just another number in their office. And so I had to take matters into my own hands. I had to take control back of my life. And that's when I went to the drawing board. I started doing my research, the best cancer-fighting diets. And when I was looking, each of them had a slight flaw to it. There was little bits and pieces of each one. And I was like, you know what? I could go on
Sure.
For instance, I ended up combining 3 of them and adding my own knowledge of insulin and carb backloading. So I created this keto alkaline nutritional program with carb backloading so I can control my insulin, because insulin is a very powerful hormone for good and for bad, and you don't want a lot of growth hormone in your system when you have tumors. So I was very meticulous on my diet. It's also where I started using I started making my own cannabis oils, and I actually had my own thing doing that. And I was using that to treat myself when I couldn't get chemotherapy. And it was through some legal loopholes, thank God, that I was able to, 6 weeks later, finally get my treatments. But at that point, I was pushing stage 4. It traveled all the way down from here, down through my armpits, into my groin. And even in the beginning, it was this close to my brain. So I knew it was just a matter of time before something happened.
As I listen to Sam and he's talking about treatment, it's he goes from stage 2 to stage 4. One thing about lymphoma that I do know is that it does spread. Your lymphatic, basically your system is supposed to be there to protect you. In this case, is going against you, is fighting against you. Like Sam, the only difference between me and Sam was because I was told I wasn't gonna have any treatment, I decided to do vitamin C injections. I decided to do diets. I decided to do all that stuff. Didn't work for me, but it's worked for a lot of people. But I would say this, when Sam was talking about those 3 diets, I get you, brother. You know why? Because the interesting thing about it it's worked for somebody. Because when something is published or somebody's sharing their information, the difference is that our DNA is so different that sometimes what worked for one person might not work for another. So even though
100% accurate.
we believe that, hey, this could work, but the thing was that you were thinking that it reminds me of me because at least it gives us hope. The one thing that it does when we're researching and we're thinking of this is giving us hope that maybe it will work. And that's when I'm looking at you, man, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I'm having all these flashbacks because there's so many moments. Yes, it's different stories. I want everyone to understand that. We totally have different stories, different cancers, different things. We have some commonalities, but what's really cool about it is that the commonalities are so cool, is amazing. And again, Sam, listen, we're going to be doing this for a long time. Don't worry, man. You're in my life now. So continue to. So you finally get treatment. We're finally in the doctor. Is the treatment something you believed in? Is this something that made sense to you?
So I want to make one quick point before that, because this is a highlight of my story, and this is what I want people to take something from this.
Amen.
When I was in that, again, I was in a dark place. Cancer made me kind of come out of that. But when I figured out, I was dying and I couldn't get treatment, there was a moment, and there was a light bulb moment that I had very spiritually, and it was an internal voice that talked to me. I was sitting on my couch, and on this day, I was on the phone with 13 insurance companies. I was begging, I was talking to people, and I was looking at the numbers of my business, and I didn't know how I was going to pay the rent. And I was sitting on the couch, and it was midday, and I was just sitting there, and I was like looking at the floor, and I was like, and I said this out loud, and I was like, you're going to die here on this couch. And like right when the words came out of my mouth, there was a switch, and it was just like, and excuse my language, but there was a voice, and I don't know where, it sounded like my voice, but it was something, a higher power, but it was like, get the fuck up. Get the fuck up right now and go lift something heavy. You're not going to die. And that was the big turning point for me, where I really was like taking full control back of my life. And that's when I really started, again, applying the training and my knowledge of physical therapy and rehab and the brain, all with the nutrition. It all became one program, because it's not just one thing. You're a trainer. You can't outwork a bad diet. You can't just do one thing. So I had to take care of my body, my brain, because my life did depend on it. And that's when I was lucky enough to get, I had a client who was an insurance broker, and we found a way, legally. We made it work. And I started my chemo regimen, which, again, I told you, if I were my first two oncologists, we did not see eye to eye on things, and they were very old school in certain methods. But I finally found someone who was, he worked. And I was doing my treatments, and I couldn't, it's not something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Especially with, I didn't have the harshest cancer, but my chemo regimen is very ABVD, every 2 weeks for 6 months. So I had 12 chemo regimens. But what I noticed, and this is where I was documenting everything, especially when it came to the nutrition, what did my body like? What didn't it like? What did I need to eat on chemo days? And like, I lifted every chemo day. Like right before chemo, I would do my lift, I would shower, and then head over to the treatment center. And people always ask me like, why do you work out? Why do you keep doing this to your body? That was life. It gave me life. It gave me energy. It gave me the ability to not let cancer bring me down. I was not going to sit back on that couch or lay in my bed and just wither away and really let it take me. I was like, you know what? I have a chance to fight, and there's a lot of people in my position who don't have that, who have it worse than I do. And I appreciated every second of life that I lived. And it changed my complete, outlook on life. And that's when I started putting it all together. And, one thing, like, I'm not a social media person. I'm not a YouTuber. Like, for me, I'm a grinder. I could get in the dirt, but when I was like, when it came to trying to like actually get my story out there, like, I was by myself. I was trying to do it all. Like, I was trying to just to live and survive, and not to survive, but thrive. And so when I started, putting this whole nutrition program together, and I was timing my carbs, and I was eating the right foods at the right time, I was beating the effects of chemo. I was getting out of bed like 5 a.m. still to go to work at the gym. Like, I had to open and I closed at 8 p.m. I still worked 80 hours a week. I had to pay for my treatments. I went bankrupt pretty much. I lost everything, but I didn't lose this. I didn't lose me, and I'm still here. And it was about maybe 6 weeks in, I was actually watching Tony Robbins' documentary on Netflix, and halfway through, I was texted she's now my girlfriend, Amy. She was at this other conference listening to, and I was like, I got this crazy idea. You're not going to approve of it, but I got this crazy idea. Like, you've seen what I'm doing. In 14 weeks, I'm going to compete in a bodybuilding competition 2 days before my last chemo treatment to prove to everybody and the medical community what I'm doing is right, and that no matter what your situation, you can take control of your life. And that's what I did. I had 14 weeks. This cancer took a lot from me. I was training, bodybuilding was my dream after football. I was doing it the right way. And, 14 weeks, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to win, but I'm going up there to make a statement to the world that, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And that's when we kept taking it up a notch. But even before that moment, like my training, like I lost a lot of my lungs during this. I lost at least 15, 20%. I had trouble breathing. So like I actually lifted more like a power lifter. Like I could lift, it was easier for me to deadlift 500 pounds for one than it was like 135 for 25 reps.
Correct.
Because I just didn't have that energy.
The stamina.
It wasn't usable. So I was like, you know what? Let's do some power bodybuilding. And that's what I did. I lifted heavy. I loved it. I went back to some of my old football training. And then the diet matched it perfectly. I was keto, alkaline, and I used my cannabis properly in the right way, different strains for the time of the day that I needed it. It helped me eat. That's the thing, like, what bothered me the most about my treatments, it wasn't, the treatment itself, it was brutal, but it was going into that chemo center, and when I walked in there, and these are all medical professionals, the table has cupcakes, there's cookies, there's, candy, there's soda, all this garbage in there. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on here? They're like, this can't help. Because, I tried that. Like, again, trial and error is the best way that you learn your body. And, like, I made one of my carb days post-chemo. And I actually felt the worst after that time because all those sugars spiked my insulin. I was just in that fog, and that chemo hit me so much harder. But when I stuck to my nutrition plan on that day, I felt, of course I didn't feel 110%,
Correct.
but I felt like I had life. And that's what propelled me, that's what gave me the energy to do what I did. But it wasn't so much for like, I want to prove the medical community, I want to prove these doctors wrong who said I couldn't do this. I actually wanted to give hope to other cancer fighters. I wanted to help inspire somebody else who thought that they were lost, to, again, my words for today, take back control. And that's where I decided to start this, foundation of mine called Fitness Fights Cancer. And I wanted to raise money for children's cancer. And I went to this children's cancer walk, and it was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And there's this amazing kid there who's a speaker. You definitely got to have him on your show. I had him on mine last week.
Amen.
And he's a champ. And it was just like, after hearing his story, and we did this walk, and I talked with him, his parents, and all these other kids, and I got to go up and get a medal. I had a Superman outfit on. It was like a Halloween costume walk. But we did it for these kids, and I was like, you know what? We're gonna raise some money for these kids, and we're gonna make this. There's gonna be a purpose to this. I'm not just going up there to flex and like, no, we're doing this for a higher purpose, and that just made me a madman inside. It took me to a whole other level where like when you have purpose in your life, nothing can stop you.
Amen.
You are an unstoppable force, and you can break through any barrier that is there. And I did. I went up, and because the crazy part was I just kept getting bigger. I was growing, and I actually went on stage, and there was an NPC show in Woodbridge called Max Muscle. Very big show, a lot of competitors, and I did classic physique. I was in the open bodybuilding. I took third place in that. I took out of 16 guys in the classic physique category, I took fourth place. So I went up there, and did my thing. And, I could actually done better. And that, like, for me, that was the part that got me the worst, that I made a little calculation error with my carbs and my electrolytes, which that's a whole bodybuilding science that's not for a day. But it's something that, for me, because I'm competitive. I like to push myself, and I didn't didn't do my best, which was what bothered me. But it was, and that was actually another life, changing moment for me. Because I was really mad. Amy stayed clear of me because she knew I was pissed because I screwed up. Like I looked my worst during the judging. I looked my best at the night show when all the judging happened.
It happens.
And it does, and I don't usually mess up my calculations, but I did there because my chemo and the electrolyte imbalance because of the chemo. But anyways, and it was like I had this life changing. Like the next day, like my tire blew on the way home, and I was already mad. And it was like 11:11. I looked at the clock and I just took a deep breath and I was like, that was never about you. It was about the kids. It was about the 250,000 plus people a year who die of cancer in the United States and the millions around the world. This is much bigger than you, Samuel. There's nothing to do with you. You did something that nobody has done, and you are going to inspire many to win back their lives, to inspire themselves that their cancer diagnosis was not a death sentence.
Amen.
That they can do something. And that's where I've made, that's my life purpose now. That is what I'm trying to do. I still have my gym. I have an online coaching. I'm building businesses. I'm grinding, doing just like you. I said, you're an inspiration to me, man. Trust me. Like I've been following you for a while, because actually it was 2 years ago that I learned of you through a mutual friend of ours who's also a bodybuilder down in Florida. She saw me and then she sent me your info, and that's when I saw you. I was like, man, this guy's doing big things. I want to make an impact like that. I want to change somebody's life like that. Because when I would do things for myself, I never felt any. Not to say selfishness in a sense. It's more of like when you contribute to others.
Correct.
You get so much more out of it, and that's what life is really about. It's how can you contribute and make this world a better place.
Amen.
And you have to first start with yourself.
Well, yeah, you have to make a decision at some point. You have to make a choice that this is where you want to go with it. As I'm listening to your story, and again, I have never heard his story, so I want everyone to understand that I want to listen to his stories. That's why I wanted him to give you more details. I've never heard his story. I've actually heard of him, but I never got a chance to listen to his story. So I wanted to learn his story because I know that God puts people in my life for a purpose. And I know that someone like him, we have a lot of commonalities and a lot of things in common that we can continue to share with people. I know we'll do big things. I know he has a conference every year that he's going to be doing, an online conference to raise awareness. I've been invited to speak there. So we'll continue to work together. But I want you guys to understand that everybody's story is different. But there's some commonalities. And the one thing that really got my attention is when he talked about being on the floor. You were on the floor or on the couch?
I was on a couch.
On the couch. And I won't say the word. I'm going to say the F word, effed up. He said, get the F up, get the F up, get the F up. And there's a moment in my story that I share with everyone that I made a promise. When I looked up, you guys see the picture, and I pointed up at God and I cried to everyone in the room to let them know, take this picture. This is going to be my testimony. I'm not losing one more pound. I was 124 pounds at the time. And I made that promise and I said, I'm not losing one more pound because I'm not dying. I made a declaration. And like when I'm listening to Sam, and I got goosebumps when he says, get the F up, because there's certain things that are spiritual that even when we share with you, as you listen to the show, you listen to anyone that's ever shared with you their story of inspiration, their story of testimony, their message from their mess, whatever it is, I promise you, you're not going to feel that way because it's their internal, it's their spiritual being that's showing up. And then we got to be obedient and we got to now make a choice. He made a choice to get up. He made a choice to fight. He made a choice to find a way. He made a choice for that. But he also shared with you, he didn't make the choice for himself. He found an inspiration, this child and this children. My foundation is for children with cancer, Sam. And I'll tell you why. Because when I visited the hospital, I had a young girl that is a survivor today. And we were in the same floor at the hospital. And she's alive and I'm alive. And we laugh at each other because, again, for me, kids have this thing, this willpower. Some of these kids don't even know they're sick. They've been sick their whole lives. They don't even know what it is to feel good. So when you go to the hospital, when you do something for them, when you inspire them, when you show up in a costume, brother, or you show up, I'm Superman. It's like it takes them away from the pain. For me, the gym, like you said, another thing you mentioned, when I went to the gym at 128 pounds, I worked out for 5 minutes and I was in pain, but it was physical pain. And that physical pain was different than the chemo pain. It was different than the bed pain. It was different than the sore pain. It was a different pain that I remembered, and it gave me life. So when I'm listening to you, Sam, I was like, man, I get you, brother, because working out gave me life. It just brought me back. It's like, okay, this is something I can do, and I'm going to do it, even though nobody wanted me to, brother. So I get you. Trust me. And one more thing, man, I want to talk. It's a kind of laughing thing. Man, do you know how many nurses I got in trouble because I was giving them, I was giving them diet plans. I was giving them diet plans, and the doctors used to come in and said they got work to do. I said, yeah, but I got to take care of them because if they keep eating this crap, they're not going to be able to take care of me. It was really weird, man. So I get you, brother.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Well, listen, I know we're going to be doing a lot of stuff together. I'm going to make sure you guys continue to follow Sam and his journey, and I will share with everyone what we're doing, and we'll probably even collaborate for my foundation. Maybe we could do something together. So, but I want to give. I know you shared the word again, but I wanted you to share it again, and I want you to define that word for everyone today. I always ask my guests to give me a word that gives them hope or drive or passion, something that gets them out of every morning. We're living in a season right now of our lives that most of us right now are doubting. What are we doing the rest of the year? What are we doing with our lives? So again, this show was really to share with you the minds of all these people from all walks of life and their inspiration, what gets them out of bed to keep going, to keep living, to keep thriving, like Sam said. So what's one word, Sam, that you can share with us today? And also give me the definition, the meaning of it.
There's one word that I live my life by. It's relentless.
Relentless.
It's a mindset. Being relentless is something. It's not just the ferocity. It's what you do every morning when you wake up. It's whether you're being a great father, a great husband, whether you're going to be awesome at your job, you're a trainer, you're doing this, whatever you do, you are the best at because you are relentless. It's more than just, again, a physical thing. It's a mentality. It is a warrior's mentality. And, for all you fighters out there, that relentless mentality is something that can save your life. And it's going to take you to a whole other level that you never thought possible. And that's something, we all have our doubts. We all go through. We all go through the tough times, but it's like when you remember who you are and you're that relentless warrior, you can do anything. And that is going to be my word that I live by really to the day I die.
Amen. Well, I want to thank Sam for his word, relentless. I want to thank for his amazing story and for his time to share with all of us today, including myself. I didn't want to know about it because I wanted to hear it for the first time with you. As I think of relentless, I think of not giving up. And I think of what is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is we just give up and die. That's the worst thing. And then we don't get to make another choice. We don't get to decide anything else in our lives because it's over. So relentless to me, as I think of a man that decided to do a bodybuilding show in the middle of chemo, that decided to prove people wrong, that decided to inspire a young child, that decided to say, I'm going to decide what happens with the rest of my life. I'm going to take control. I'm going to be relentless and not stop. Because the other side is giving up in death. When I made a promise because something inside me said, you're going to live through this and you're going to share your story and you're going to inspire millions. There was a word that Sam heard, get the F up, get the F up, get up. You're not done yet. So as we shared two men that went through cancer, the C word, the word that a lot of people decide is their death sentence. You're listening now to two people that are telling you you can still make a decision. You can still make a choice. You can be relentless and not give up and decide that cancer is not your death sentence. Again, I want to thank Sam for his story, for his amazing relentlessness to keep going and living, and today being an inspiration to so many, not just his clients, but everybody that hears his message. And like I always say, find hope, have faith, and live every day with a purpose. Sam is living his purpose, and so am I. Are you? Ladies and gentlemen, it's been another segment of Life Changes for Life, and I wish you a good night.